You started your podcast in September 2020, but that's not the first time you'd interviewed people. In 2018, you were doing written interviews for onlinemoneyallstars.com, which was your blog. And there's a certain curiosity that you need to have, I think, to be a good interviewer. What have you always been hyper curious, and what are the things that you're most curious about right now?
So I have not considered myself always curious, but if I were to look at the things that I've done in my past, it is a lot of things that are not normal, or just like I would expand beyond what I would think in any given moment. So like what I mean by that is that starting the Knicks blog when I was 15, I also did a bunch of written interviews as well with reporters of the team, and then interviewing NBA players as well. Um, but I really think the curiosity started for me when I started meditating, when I started looking at my mind and my soul and just like, who am I? What am I here for? What did I do? How did I? Wow, my brain will just spout out thoughts without me even realizing. Like, it just keeps doing this. This is crazy. What's going on in your mind? What's going on in everyone's mind? And it was, it's it's really interesting to think about, like, where does that come from, or where did my curiosity come from? And I think it's meditation. What am I curious about right now? Curious about running. I'm curious about podcasting. I'm curious about expanding in my own comfort with myself. I feel like I'm so comfortable in any given moment. Like, I feel like I can go into any room, any place, any party, just be myself and be good. And by virtue of me being there, it is right. But it's like, are there levels to that? Like, I feel amazing, but I'm curious about that. Like, and teaching other people how to do that too, because I think if you have all the money in the world, or if you have all the bestsellers, or you have the amazing podcast, or you have whatever it is that you're chasing, but you're not comfortable by yourself or with other people, you're not winning. That's not success, to me at least. And so that's what I'm curious about right now.
There's so many things there, so many open loops. Clint Murphy talked about it. We had a conversation about how podcasting makes you comfortable in real life because you become a better listener, you become a better speaker, you understand people better. You mentioned kind of meditating, of course, and I know that you started meditating maybe 5 or 6 years ago, very consistently, and uh, your parents started calling you Danny 2.0 after that because you were starting to shift a little bit, and you'd like written it down in a folder, and they didn't know, and there was this like manifestation almost that happened. And meditating's almost become a part of your brand at this point. I feel like you talk about it a lot, and I think about you when I think about meditation. What's something else that you do every day that maybe people don't know about you?
I'm a pretty simple man. You know, I'm a simple man, and I'm simple, man. Like, it's really the truth. And I run, I lift weights, I do push-ups, I eat foods that energize me, I podcast. I'm pretty simple, like, and what you see is what you get. And I read, like, I don't do anything. There's no secret thing that I'm doing. There's no like, um I call my grandparents, like, but I talk about all this stuff, because I talk about what I do because I believe in it, because it has impacted my life in a positive way. And I've tried to do things other ways, and that hasn't worked out as well for me. And so, to me, I don't know if there's too much where people don't know about me or don't know things that I'm doing. But that's the first thing that comes to mind.
I'm curious, what kind of content are you consuming? Because, your first tweet ever was June 16th, 2018. And you said, using social media for your own benefit as opposed to consumption is flipping the switch. And I want to know about what you're consuming, but also on a broader scale, podcasting is obviously one of the most constructive ways, I think, or constructive forms of media that we can watch and take in. Can you talk about some of the benefits as well of the long form content versus maybe some of the quick hit stuff we see with TikTok and Reels and things like that?
Yeah, I love podcasting because podcasting is like, it's deeper. I realize, like, if you just if you look at my behavior, you'll see like someone who's just going one on one with a bunch of different people. Like, I'll go to a party, 500 people will be there, and I'll just want to grab one person and be like, what's going on here? And the reason for that is because when you're in a group of 8 people, it's like you're trying to figure out where are the common themes that everyone can relate to and understand. But when I'm going one on one with someone, we're talking about the difficulty with their mom and how they treated the person's sister, and how that impacted them. That person might not feel comfortable to talk to 8 people about that, because not all 8 people can really like understand and grasp and ask questions and like feel that. And the person might feel burdened by giving that to the group. So I love talking deeply to one person. And then podcasting is just a way for me to do that. Podcasting is a way for people to feel that, of like, this is me going one on one with one human. And you could hear the conversation if you'd like, but this is where we find new insights into ourselves with a one on one convo. So that's why I love podcasting, at least.
You've had a lot of amazing one-on-one combos at this point, over 400 of them. You just put out a YouTube video the other day that was the 15 lessons that you've learned from 400 plus podcasts. And the final one was about, you know, at the beginning of the journey, you felt like you were kind of sitting in the audience, looking up at the stage at all these other successful people, and that you were admiring them. And there was kind of like a gap between you guys and you were looking up at them. But, you know, you've had so many people on the podcast now. I want to know, outside of Gary V, Andy Frisella, and Alex Hormozi, who was someone that agreed to do your show that you were blown away that you were able to actually get?
Peter Crone. I mean, I love Peter Crone. I think he's an incredible human being. I was so excited when he agreed to come on. Just like I was I was in heaven. I mean, he's the most starstruck I've ever been for a podcast guest, because he does what I do at the highest level. If I'm really trying to understand someone's soul and help them come to new light and new realizations about themselves, he's able to do that within 10 minutes. He can understand your flaws, the things you're holding back, your insecurities, where they come from, how do you get to a better place, all of that. And he's able to help you do that. I'm out here doing 5 to 20 hours of research per guest and being like, okay, this is what happened in your childhood. But like, to be able to sit with someone in the moment and really feel their presence, even virtual, to me is remarkable. So he's someone who I was very starstruck, and I was blown away when he agreed to come on.
That's definitely something that I am working on. And it's not that I can't do that. I actually love doing that. I was just in a space the other day and it was called like, what's your superpower? And I got up there and I had to think about it for a second. And then I thought empathy. And empathy is something that it helps me a lot in my content, whether it's podcasting or whether it's just writing a tweet and understanding how someone's going to take it in. And I find that with this podcast, it's a little more educational. So I have like a direct target audience, and I'm trying to extract some things out of my guests that have to do with content and content creation. But I love what you're doing, and I love other podcasts like Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman or whoever, or Peter Crone, where it's like they're just sitting in a room, and yes, you've prepared, but you're willing to just go wherever for as long as you want. And I'm definitely going to do that at some point and probably start like the Greg Lunt podcast. But right now, I haven't done that, but I have this itch to do that, this urge to do that. And I'm excited about that. How do you think about that? Did you always it was always just an exploratory thing for you, right?
Yeah. And there's something deeply human about two humans connecting. And there's something to me that's like, I don't gravitate towards the content where it's like, I will teach you this, this, and this. Because I'm like, great, but who are you as a human being? I want to know you, Greg. I don't want to know what's going on with how to do the content the best way. I'm great if that sprinkles it in, but who are you? That's what life's all about. Life's not about, okay, well, you post this amount of times on Twitter, you post this amount of times on Instagram. Like, that's not life. That's not what we're doing here. That's a small game. The big game, the real game, the game that scares you is the game of like, this is my soul. This is my superpower. This is what lights me up. Like, that's an entirely different reality. And my push is like, let's get more people playing the real game that scares them. And what's the thing you're scared to fail at? That's your truth. That's what you need to lean into, not the let's play it safe.
Yeah. I think the podcast is very much, I'm in this container that I've put, and I found that Spaces and X are like where I just go crazy. Like, I'm actually hosting 1 to 2 spaces a day right now, and I'm talking some serious shit, man. I'm all over the place. I'm talking about my problems with dogs, like just getting people riled up. I'm talking about, I think milk's disgusting. I'm talking about, just things that men and women dynamics, like putting myself out there in a way that, it's really cool to have that dichotomy, I think, between the education and the entertainment. But I still am missing, I think, to your point, that one-on-one deep conversation, because I love that. I thrive in that. And I'm realizing this podcast, I think, needs to evolve that way. And I'm really excited about it. I look to people like you that are really setting the standard, especially like in this new wave, right? I mean, there's not a lot of guys that are doing it right, that are like coming up off of social directly. A lot of these other, like the Joe Rogans and the Lexes of the world, they had like these, real careers, quote unquote. And then they opened a podcast where it's like someone like you just come online, and I think your goal in the beginning was to make some money before the podcast even. So in 2018, I know you made like your first $1,000 in that first couple of weeks, and you had the drop shipping store. And now you've put out this new course, The Art of Interviewing, and it teaches people how to get guests and do research and ask great questions. And you've done over $20,000 in revenue already. What does the monetization journey looked like for you and felt like for you from the beginning till now? And then do you have thoughts about how you're going to build a business around this going forward?
Um, I don't have a lot of thoughts on monetization. I'm not I'm not smart at it. I'm not good at it. I follow my intuition. I follow what feels right in any given moment. I don't know where exactly it's going to land. I don't know how it's going to land. If I had given you the blueprint for how I thought about monetization 6 months prior to today, I said, "Well, I'm doing consulting and it's working out. I don't know what it's going to lead to." I don't know if I could have predicted that I was going to do a course on interviewing, and likewise, I don't know 6 months from now what that's going to lead to. Is it going to lead to speaking? Is it going to lead to a book? Is it going to lead to, I have no clue. And I'm open to the flow of life and seeing how it unfolds. So I've got a lot of trust, and it's worked out for me thus far very well. So no, I don't really have plans for the future for monetization. Similar to, I don't have plans for the podcast for the future. I just like, the plan is like, we're going to sell out Madison Square Garden, but it's like, I don't know how we're going to get there. I don't know what the guests are going to be 6 months from now. I don't know who's going to be on the show. I view monetization the same way, which I know is unusual.
It's really interesting because I deal with something similar where in life, people are always like, okay, you have to set these 6-month goals, and then you bring them down into months, and then into weeks, and then into days. And I've never really operated like that. I have like rough goals for the next like couple months, like where's the direction I'm heading generally. And then I wonder, like, am I hamstringing myself by not having those goals? Like, I know it's like, oh, this has worked for me so far, but has it really? Like, could I be farther right now if I actually had some tried and true methods that all the richest and most successful, I mean, obviously success is
I'm the most
subjective, but
successful
the
person I
most,
know. Like,
mm,
truly, like, I love what I do. I love how I do it, and I love doing it every day. And I love being in my body and mind. That is success.
but do you think that, and I love what you're doing, but just to challenge you a little bit,
Please.
like if you had a monetization plan, or if you had a business coach or something that was like, hey, why don't you like think about this? Or maybe they're just bringing it out of you that you're like, actually, I would want that. Maybe I should focus on that. Do you think that there is room for optimization in the way that you could get to Madison Square Garden faster?
Why do we need to go fast? Well, what's the only reason you go fast is if you're there are many reasons to go fast. I'm not interested in going fast. I'm interested in getting there, maybe at some point, maybe not, but I'm interested in playing the game. I love the game. And I just love playing it. And yeah, I don't know. That's my ethos. That's who I am. And yeah, I could go faster, I'm sure, but I love going slow. So why are we trying to go fast? Because everyone else says to go fast? like let's think for ourselves here. And
Yeah.
I thought for myself and was just like, I'm gonna go slow.
Maybe fast is not the KPI. Maybe slow actually is the angle, the presence, the gratitude, the day to day. Everyone talks about the like stay more present, and also how do you get here faster? How do you get there faster? And it's this like interesting dichotomy that we don't even realize. I don't even realize maybe sometimes that I have this contradiction in the way that I'm approaching life.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you love every moment, there's no reason to try to speed it up. Like truly. That's true for money. That's true for just like the day to day. That's true for the podcast. That's like, what I'm going to try to meditate 20 minutes faster? Like, that doesn't even make sense. And if your entire life is a meditation, then what are you trying to go faster for?
Yeah. So, well, I do want to ask a business question though, because
Fair.
it is a business. Whether or not we're going fast or not, there's a reality to it, and maybe
Fair.
things are interesting either way. You've interviewed David Senra of the Founders Podcast. You've interviewed Sam Parr of My First Million, and
Sean
Sean.
too.
Um, Particularly David's appearance on My First Million. I don't know if you've seen that one, but he talks about podcasting as a business. And he says that podcasting is like the printing press for the spoken word. That's how big of a movement and of a technology that it is, because you're listening to people talk for tens or even hundreds of hours, and you become deeply connected with that individual. Like your fans feel like they know you, even though you've never spoken to them. And that creates incredible leverage for you as a creator or as an influencer, whatever you want to call it. There are people that take that influence and then become like the marketing arm, let's say, of a platform or a startup. You see like JK Molina partnered with Tweet Hunter early on, and then they sold. Even something like Joe Rogan and On It, something like that. So it's less about like sponsorships for the podcast, and it's more about you being integrated directly with another platform or product. Is that something you would ever be open to, or are you way more like, I just want to keep my thing organic to me and we'll figure it out? That's another way.
Yeah, that's not an either or. Like it could be organic to me, and it could also I could have a product that is associated with me in some way. I mean, it's a great point. Like the David Senra makes about the audio is the printing press. Like we're living in the printing press for audio, and how cool is that? And what a remarkable thing. Um, and to me that's so exciting that I get to live in this moment and that we get to live in this moment. It's like, and I love doing this. And so, yeah, I think it's just the start of podcasting. I think there opportunities are going to come. I think podcasters as a whole are capturing way less value than they are giving to the world, which to me is what always my goal is like, how can I give more than I take? 51-49 is what Gary Vaynerchuk has said before. Which is like, give more than you take. Be the 49% in every interaction. Why? It feels good. It lights up my soul to do that. And I feel like it's the right thing to do. And I feel that as a podcaster, I'm very much doing that. I'm just giving more than I'm taking. I'm giving this conversation. I'm giving in helping that person learn something about themselves. I'm giving that to the audience without asking anything in return. And so when I do make an ask, like Art of Interviewing, I'm like, yo, check this out. And if you want to check it out, great. And if you don't, also great. So yeah, special time to be a podcaster, and special time when the value hasn't really been able to been captured by podcasters in a real way yet.
Yeah, I agree. I feel that so much, the just give, 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 and then kind of things just take care of themselves. Things manifest in your life and opportunities present themselves. And I'm finding with spaces, I'm kind of doing that. I'm just pouring into people, especially like the smaller accounts. I just love lifting people up and finding ways to talk to them. I know you're really busy doing so many episodes a week and all the research and everything. Have you ever thought about doing any spaces, maybe even not structured ones, but just getting in there and talking to the community?
Definitely. I think it's a great idea. I I'm very hesitant to like pour my time into specific things because I love doing the podcast. I've When I have done spaces, it's kind of messed up my brain. Not like in a serious way, but I'm curious to get your perspective on this, where it's like it's almost like scrolling an algorithm, and it's almost like being at a party sometimes. Maybe I'm not doing it correctly, but it's like for me it's draining versus talking to one-on-one is energizing. And so let's say we have a space and it's me and you on the space, and then someone else has their perspective, and then they ask the question. Now we're three people, and now a fourth person comes on stage to talk about what the third person said, and now all of a sudden I feel like I'm in the situation that's draining me at the party, the eight people. And so that's kind of why I haven't leaned into spaces. Obviously, when I talk to you and say that, you could have a situation where it's just one-on-one, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Have you had dealt with that issue at all or that thought?
I mean, I've definitely been in situations, some spaces are better than others, some give you energy, some take. But I think ultimately the same way that you look at podcasting as an audio platform and what that allows for, I think similarly, spaces, it's more of how you structure your show and what you make of it. And it's like, look, we have this platform that you can do one-on-one, you can do group, you can open up to just a select roundtable of people. You can bring up audience members. You can talk by yourself and just do a monologue. You can do anything you want. You can repurpose the content, and it's all tied to your X account so that maybe you bring on somebody, Alex Hormozi, on your space, and now all of a sudden your space has 600 people in it or 1600 people in it, and you're getting followers off that. So there's a network effect that's a little harder to capture with podcasts. So it's more about, I think, how you would structure your show or what your goals really are. If your goal is not really to grow your X account or to, but well, I will say there are ways to leverage spaces to get your podcast out there further. And we'll talk about it later. I'd love to do it with you, where I'm doing these podcast listening parties where I basically play my podcast the day they come out. The guest sits on stage with me and we just basically press mute. We don't have to do anything. We play the show and then hundreds of people come through and listen. So it's like a nice kickstart to the episode. And starting a podcast, I would say, is pretty easy. Getting people to watch is pretty hard. People ask me all the time, should I start a podcast or should I start a Spaces series? And early on for the podcast for me, which I still am very early on, I'm not looking at views as my KPI. It's more about brand awareness, because I'm pushing clips and full episodes on X and I'm getting other influencers to talk about it that have been on it. So do people know that Greg Lunt puts out a high quality podcast with good guests consistently? That's what I like. And then secondly, the networking, right? I've been able to have incredible people on the show, and you can make an ask, hey, I want to meet you for an hour and ask you whatever I want. You could never get that otherwise. Distant third right now is view count, right? I know you recorded 20 podcasts before you even put one out. So you had this like long-term sustainable vision. What advice do you give to people? I'm sure people approach you all the time. Should I start a podcast? What do you tell them?
I tell them everyone should try to start a podcast. Um, like everyone should record 6 episodes. Everyone should record 10. Everyone should interview their family. I think that's like a very useful exercise to do, and record it to learn more about them. Like, it's crazy what comes up in these interviews. And you're like, I never knew that about my mom, dad, grandpa, grandma. Like, wow, where did that come from? And you spend so much time with these people. But now that it's interview mode. They know it's recorded. They know their great grandchildren might listen to this. They're like, oh, let me give the good stuff away. So yeah, I think everyone should try and see if it's for them. I think the purpose of doing 100 podcast episodes is not to have a successful podcast, which is what I thought when I started, but instead it's to figure out if you like podcasting. And I actually think if I was starting today, I would do more Twitter spaces, and I'd create a Twitter space show instead of a podcast show if I was just starting from scratch, just if I had zero audience or zero anything. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to send people.
That's usually what I recommend to people as well, because it's really hard if you don't have an audience already to get your podcast to do anything, unless, like you say, you're doing it to get better at podcasting. If you're doing it for the reps, that's great. I sat down in 2017 and I had this urge for a few months to just start a podcast. And I just sat down in front of my computer and I pressed record and I did 50 episodes for 50 weeks by myself, just talking to myself about whatever happened that week, 5 to 30 minute episodes, edited them, did cover art for them, posted them online, and had no audience. And I knew I had no audience. I had maybe 5 family and friends listening. And I was super honest. What's been cool is I've been able to go back and take those episodes and play them in spaces to my audience, because when I did it,
Wow.
it was this, my future, and I would talk about it. I would say, my future audience is going to hear this. My grandchildren are going to hear this. And I took this, I was like, imagine if Joe Rogan sat in a room in 2001 and just talked about, oh, I'm struggling at the comedy club. This girl just dumped me. That it's like, that's gold, bro. And so it was this idea. I found my voice that way just by doing it. And then it ended up being this podcast many years later as well. So it's just getting those reps. And you've been doing so many podcasts, 3 a week, basically from the start. And you're managing multiple social media channels with the short clips and the mid length and the full episodes, of course. What systems have you put in place to be able to consistently generate so much content?
So I did the first 300 myself. Like, I was the only person working on the show for the first 300 episodes. And then around episode 300 or 310 or 320. I have to go back and actually figure out which episode it started. This guy sent me a message saying, "Hey, I can help you out." And I was like, "Okay, I've gotten that message 100 times. I didn't say anything." And he proceeded to send me one clip every day, one 60-second vertical video clip every day for a month straight. And I was like, these are good. And this guy is loving the podcast. And this is crazy. So, like, let me give him more work and let me hire this guy. And that was Video King Pablo. And he is in charge now of when I finish an episode, he gets the raw files and he is the king of the video team in every sense. So, like, he's the king. The only, maybe someday he's going to have people who are helping him. Like, just I'm thinking about this for the first time now, but like, he's the best. So that is how I've managed. His full-time job is to create clips for different channels and different videos. And I focus fully on having the conversation, having the interview, the pre-interview, and getting the guests. So it's a wonderful, wonderful team. But first 300 were myself.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's great now. You get to go just straight into your zone of genius, right? And you don't have
Yeah.
to really worry about the other stuff. And that was something that I was starting to get worried about. It was just taking a lot out of me with all the other stuff I was doing, and I was doing all the editing and all this stuff the same way as you. And again, I had some inbound where like a guy who I talked to in Spaces a bunch of times was just like, "Hey, I have an agency. Let me do this for like a really low price, and let's just see what we can work out." And we've been working together for the past like month or so, getting things ready. And it's been brilliant to like have somebody that you can just throw the footage and then 48 hours later, you're going to have exactly what you want. It's an incredible release. And I love dealing with people on the internet and meeting new people that way. But offline, that's really special too, right? Getting to meet these people. And I want to talk about running, which you had brought up earlier. I get my 10K steps in every day, but I'm more of a
Nice.
walker. But
Nice.
this morning I went for a run in honor of this interview. And you put out tweets regularly inviting people to go on these morning runs in Austin with you. How important is it, do you think, for us to take these connections that we make online and bring them offline?
I mean, I just love connecting with human beings, And I think that there's no like strategy behind it. We actually just got a name for it. Me and my buddy Harry started it. And Harry said, let's do it the 4M Club, the 4M Run Club. And I love that because it's Meat Mafia is his brand. And my last name's Miranda. And we do miles. So it's 4M's. And then we do 4 miles as well. So it makes sense. Um, but there's no mission. There's no purpose. There's no like, we're going to do this. So we're going to get this amount of money, but we're deeply in our mission and purpose, right? Of like connecting people, of being with people, of pouring light into them, of seeing them for who they are and watching them build. Like I've done this now, maybe I started doing the runs with Harry, maybe uh, like 2 or 3 months ago. And I was loving it so much. I was like, this is the best day. Tuesdays are the best. Why? Because before 9 a.m., I get to run, I get to be with friends, I get to be in nature, and then I get a coffee after. And I'm like, there's nothing better. I'm on a high. I could do this every day. And so for me, it's just like when you see people connect with other people, which I'm sure you get from doing the spaces, it's like, it's such a wonderful feeling of like, wow, if I didn't create this space, this this person would not have met this person, and then this person wouldn't have done business with this person wouldn't have been friends with, and it's like, whoa, you're creating so many connections by virtue of bringing people together. So yeah, I hosted really my first one last week and then did my second one this week of hosting it, and I was like, I love this so much. This is the greatest thing ever. So
Yeah. So that's a
do you have
way.
any do you have any in-person spaces yourself that you've cultivated?
I haven't I've met a few people that live in Phoenix. So I don't know if you know Louis Schulman or Nicholas Verge. We've met up, and then this other girl, Elizabeth, who all live in Phoenix. But I'm actually going to Miami next month, or actually in like 2 weeks, and I'm meeting up with Dakota and Talon and Brett Eric and a few other guys. We're going to a festival, EDC Orlando, in in about 2 weeks. So that should be awesome. And it'll be my first kind of like meeting like some of the people that are really like doing the damn thing on X, and it's super cool. And I'm excited about that. And I want to do more of that. I'm also going to be, when I'm there, I'm going to be interviewing Dickie and Cole at the Shipyard, which is their new YouTube studio that they built. And it's going to be my first in-person interview. And
Let's
I'm,
go.
I know you didn't do your first in-person until episode 228, right? With Noah Kagan. What advice do you have for me doing my first in-person interview with a big guest?
I would say do one before with a not big guest.
Mm.
Uh, and even if you don't post it, and even just like if you do it with a family member or a friend, and just like do go through the process with them, like actually turn on the recording gear, actually think about the tone you want to bring and the energy you want to bring, because it's different. And that's what really made me fall in love with interviewing, was like, wow, I could see how his energy has shifted from just questions that I'm asking him. And that was so powerful. And I was like, wow. And so, yeah, I guess my advice is like, don't do it with a big one first. Do it with someone who do one with there's no pressure, so that you can really get the reps down, like anything.
Can you go a little deeper into how what the feeling is when it's online compared to offline, and what that does to you as an interviewer?
I think the feeling is helping someone understand themselves better and seeing how that is creating more light in their body. That's the best way I could put it. And then you feeling, and then I feeling more light as a result of them uncovering new things about themselves. And I could kind of sense that online, but when you see someone's body language and you see how they're shifting and you see like, whoa, like that hit me. Wow, like really thinking about it. To me, the feeling is about like seeing the light come off of their body and seeing them more energized as a result. And then feeling more energized that, oh, I asked that question. I didn't realize I had that question in me, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's the shared experience is heightened, right?
Yes.
Like you're able to really like we can share ideas here and some energy based on like looking at you, but there's a real feeling when you're in the room having a deep conversation with somebody that when you react to the thing they said or they react to what you said, you kind of like, that the other person felt it too, like for real, And I think that, like you said, can bring out like amazing questions, amazing insights. And those are the ones that probably just hit home runs for you internally. And then also on the internet that when you watch that and when you hear that, that that's real, and that's the beauty of the podcast.
Yeah. And you get better and better at connecting with people in that way. And you look at it, it's like Twitter is like connecting with people. Doing Zoom calls or StreamYards are connecting with people. In person, like it's all connecting with people. Like maybe that's the through line of my life. Maybe that's my reason for being here, connecting human beings.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're making me think there's somebody that says that, and I can't remember, but I do want to talk about the podcast because you said that you want this to be the number one podcast in the world, the Danny Miranda podcast to be the number one podcast in the world. Maybe you've changed that, but I know you just said Madison Square Garden as well. So you do have this huge vision, and you mentioned connecting people. So the bigger the podcast, the better, right? But even if you don't get there, it's the journey that's really the fulfilling part. It reminds me of Gary V trying to own the Jets, right? It's like he's said so many times, it's the journey to buy them that's really what it's all about. You just shared your new cover art for the podcast on Twitter. Can you talk about that? I think it's beautiful. I read your post as well. Can you open up about that a little bit and how you're making this transfer over and what you're most excited about going forward for the podcast overall with this extended vision that you have?
Yeah. I changed the podcast art because I wanted more light to be involved, right? Like I was just talking about that, the light that comes off someone, I could feel when they are just moved by the questions. And it's like, really, what am I doing here? What am I doing with the podcast? I'm trying to bring light to people. I'm trying to help people see their own light. And why is the podcast cover dark then? Why is it moody? Why is it? And it's interesting because I never like considered that thought of like, oh, it's a dark. I was just like, we're going on a journey. It's cloudy on a journey sometimes, and like, let's go. And then I just was like, I need more light in this. And, someone created an incredible logo that was filled with more light, that was close enough to my old logo. And it was amazing. And I was like, this shows the evolution of more light being entered into my body, mind, and soul, and hopefully be able to transfer it into other people's body, minds, and soul. And I mean, it's gotten amazing feedback. I love it, and I'm so stoked on and excited for the next chapter of what this podcast brings. Maybe 3 years from now, it's just completely, it's all light. You will see, but yeah, it's an amazing thing to be a part of and to witness, and that's kind of why I made the podcast logo have more light.
Yeah, we're going to bring the before and after up on the YouTube video here so people can see it. And what I really like about it as well is, like you said, it's close enough to the old one. So it's not like you're even rebranding. It's just purely an evolution. And you mentioned kind of like how you're kind of standing on the little mountain. So it's like, I've gotten this far, and maybe that's the mountain from the old one. And look how small it is compared to everything in front of me. And it's not, and also it's that it's like kind of dawn versus like the sun up in the sky. Like I made it. It's like everything's just beginning for me. And it's the same guy in the same spot with a slightly altered perspective and a much grander and brighter vision. It's beautiful.
And his hood's off.
Mm.
And it's like, when you start something, when you're like at the bottom of the steps, it's like, all right, let's get to work, like let's go. And then as you start climbing, you're like, all right, the energy is feeling it, and you're like, all right, like got to lay the land, and the hood's off. So I
The
thought that was
hood, I
interesting
think,
too.
is interesting that you mentioned, because it's like when you put a hood on, you can really only see forward, right?
Mm.
It's kind of like you just have this one idea that you're just I'm putting my head down and getting to work, like you said. And when you take the hood off, again, you said it, it's your own words, the lay of the land. Like you're able to kind of look around and take everything in because you're more stable in yourself and in your podcast and your career or in your life,
Mm-hmm.
where, okay, it's fine. I can take more inputs in and I can handle this, and it'll potentially create more opportunities and connections, and allowing that for yourself by removing the hood. So it's cool that you have a hood on right now too in the video.
No coincidences.
No, none at all. Listen, man, I'm a huge fan of yours. I think that what you're doing with bringing love and grace and gratitude and presence and humility and consistency to your content and to people on the internet, especially at such a young age and over so many years' time, is really, really inspiring. Um, I love how you honor your guests with great research and amazing questions. I know that just me getting started, the more research I do, the more the guests just appreciate their time. And when your mission is to connect with people and to bring light to people, the best way you can do it through this medium is to just go read their work and actually listen to their podcasts and give them, let them know that they've been heard. Right. And I just really appreciate that about you, and having the generosity to give me your time today. And I also want to just allow you to, if you would, share anything that you think would be encouraging to people in general, to content creators, to the world. Like, what is kind of the message that you find yourself sitting in right now that drives you?
It's an internal game as much as the stuff, the money, the recognition from others. Like it's internal. Are you doing things that you and yourself would enjoy doing, even if you couldn't tell anyone about it? You know, I think that is it's very difficult to get there. And I'm easily influenced by people just as a human being who's excited by nature, who loves people, who loves being connected to people. So I understand that about myself. And at the same time, it's the push of like, if the world is 99% external, if you are spending 99% of your time with other people's thoughts, how about we even out that balance and spend some more time with our own thoughts and going internal? It's like, when was the last time you just went on a walk with no inputs coming in? When was the last time you just sat there and just really listened to whatever was supposed to come out? We don't give credence to that. We don't think that's real. We don't think there's any like way that that could be beneficial because we're not doing anything. We're not going forward. We're not getting faster. But it's like, let's let's just listen, and life gets better when you do that. So That's my vision. That's my mission. Turn off my podcast, turn on your own mind, and let's get it.
There's a tweet right there. Guys, follow Danny on X at Hey Danny Miranda. Check out the Art of Interviewing course if you want to start a podcast, do spaces, all these things where, you just, even if you're not, it'll just help you learn about people and learn about yourself. Danny, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, man.
I appreciate you as well. Thank you for having me and following up. It means a lot.